Good.
I've,
So, well, how have things been since you contacted me first of all? Because it's a few weeks now.
yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it's been a kind of it's kind of a lot of realization has been going on in this last month,
Fantastic.
and uh, I mean, yeah, it's been quite profound. I mean, you never know whether would that have been the case before.
Mm.
I don't know, but it seems to be. I don't know. I don't know the reason. Maybe that if you when you point in a direction, things kind of you just move more towards that direction, don't you? So
Yes. It's kind of opening the door, I guess, because everything's available to us, but we just have to put ourselves in the right place, really.
yeah, I
That's
I I, I feel that quite strongly because it's uh yeah, it's like it's kind of a snowballing thing, isn't it?
yeah.
And if you say yes to it, it's sort of it's that's that confirmation that it's a you say yes and the yes gets bigger somehow. I don't know if
Exactly, yeah. Well, it's aligning with your infinite nature, really, and then that opens the door. Whereas the mental realm is keeping us in limitations. So it's great the way you describe it. Would you like to just give me a little background, Ben, just to, how things,
yeah.
not just in recent years, really, not too far back necessarily, whatever you feel
Um,
value.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said in my email, I basically had a little, a pretty heavy bout of depression after
Yes,
university, which was a long time ago.
yes,
And then I became interested in yoga and sort of these type of things, and I had kind of a lot of kind of therapy, if you like,
mm.
which helped, like incrementally helped a little bit, like, but it
Yeah,
took a bloody long time,
yeah.
and actually, yeah, you know,
Well,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, sorry, Ben. Yeah, it's interesting the depression came after university because um, university tends to put us into mind predomination. It kind of locks us into the logical mind. So whereas previously there was much more access to your infinite nature, but the further we go into education, the way it exists at the moment, it puts us into the logical mind, and then we lose access to, well, it's access to the body of bliss, really. So it all becomes a bit flat.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that it came after that time. And
That.
yeah, so but then yeah, and then did you mention Mooji and Rupert as well?
Yeah. So just prior to lockdown, um, me and my wife became interested in Mooji and did a couple of retreats and things, and
Mm.
at the same time we got interested in sort of Kriya yoga with Sadguru, which I know is
Oh,
more kind of progressive
yeah,
path.
yeah,
Um, but both of which, I mean, we loved. But when I was going to Muji, I knew there was something being said there, but I didn't have I was going, I don't know what. There's something that is being said, but I don't get it. I'm not, I didn't have access to it in any way.
mm,
And then I moved on to kind of Rupert Spira
mm,
and did a few retreats there, and there's a much more kind of a feeling of access to impersonal being
mm,
through that, or whatever, however it's termed, awareness, or
mm.
yeah. So I mean that's been great, but it was when I started watching yours, and you were talking about the invitations.
Mm.
So I was just like, hold on a minute, I've kind of missed something. And also in all the kind of non-duality stuff, there's a lot of there's no doer, there's no choice,
Mm.
and I kind of think I've gone down a little bit of a blind alley on that one.
It's a bit disempowering, really, because it's only part of the picture. Because I think Neo Advaita is, saying there is no one, there's nothing you can do, which that's true in terms of impersonal being, that there is no one, because obviously it's just an impersonal field of being. But that doesn't mean that the the dualistic realm, that we just kind of write that off because there are different kind of rules operating in the dualistic realm, and you can't apply the rules of impersonal being to the dualistic realm. If you do, it just results in frustration, and it isn't helpful. Whereas understanding the way the dualistic realm works as being distinct from our infinite nature gives us a kind of practical application as to how we can have the best experience in both ways, and also understanding the energetic implications of the dualistic realm is helpful because we begin to realize that many of the structures in this world are designed to put us into energetic compromise in one way or another, and learning how to release ourselves from that is helpful.
Because you still got to go to the shops, right?
Yeah,
You,
exactly.
you need some food, um, and your body needs some maintenance and various. And so that's what you mean by that, isn't it? Like that
Yes.
if you go too heavy on the Neo Advaita, it's like there's no one here, there's nothing happening. Just game over, basically, isn't it?
Well, it can create a real sense of futility. And I know a few people who've adopted that wholeheartedly, and it's either made them ill, or I know a couple of them have committed suicide because it just seems to be hopeless, really.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it isn't like that. That's the good news.
yeah. I feel that. I had a bit of a yesterday. I had a bit of a realization,
Hmm.
and I mean, maybe you can tell me if I'm in the right kind of heading in the right direction.
Hmm.
But they uh, kind of I mean I've always felt like people have always said there's no one there,
Hmm.
there's no one there, right?
Hmm.
So and I kind of recognize that to an extent,
Hmm.
like that it is just impersonal awareness
Yes.
that is there, but yeah, I always still in sort of felt like that there is. I still feel like there's a Ben
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
there, and it's been quite kind of, well, I haven't really realized it, but it's been quite a strong, um well you know I mean I kind of sense that like if I that's the thing I way I can put it, it's like we think of ourselves as a kind of um like I'm thinking like of a Ruka, you know so we're like there's this sort of body burying down into the sort of foot, isn't there? Like
Hmm.
deep into there's like a root into the foot,
Hmm.
and like I've been kind of thinking myself as that is what I am.
Hmm.
That there's this root of kind of history or whatever
Hmm.
that I've got to deal with.
Hmm.
And then, but like yesterday, I was sitting in the car and I suddenly were like, hold on a minute, like, and like not quite sure that is actually correct.
Hmm.
And what I think it is that like we are the kind of um we're like the sphere of awareness, and things come and go in that sphere of awareness. But as fundamentally, we are just the space in which it exists, in which things arise.
Hmm.
But there's no root.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah.
There's the history is imagined.
Yes. Well, it certainly has no foundation really, because are you familiar with the koshas, Ben? The idea of the kosher?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm as
Hmm.
familiar as from hearing from you, but
Yeah,
I probably couldn't quote what you'd said before. So
sure. Well, really, the thing you're describing is the distinction between the body of wisdom, which is effortless being, and the mental body or the dualistic realm, because um, depending on which of those filters we're utilizing, we're having a completely distinct experience. And so the secret is to become familiar with, what's available in each of them, and then to be able to access them consciously. And some people, they say, "Oh, I had a glimpse," or "You had an experience." That tends to be when there's an experience which just arises without any real understanding of where they are or why it happened. But it's possible, it's like somebody giving you a Lamborghini without a handbook, and you get in it and you don't quite know how to use it. But when when you become familiar with the way the different filters work, then you can utilize them consciously, and it's just much more. Well, it's just a much better experience. It's better in every respect, really. So let's just have a look, though. It sounds as though there's a lot of clarity already, which is fantastic. And your intuition, as you were saying before we started recording, is, that's definitely guiding you very effectively. So it's knowing that we begin and remain as attributeless beings. So that's really just attributeless being is just, you could say, awareness aware of itself. That's
Yeah.
the sort of traditional way of describing it. And that's all there ever is, really. It's just that awareness aware of itself can be described as the knower, the means of knowing, and the known. So we can know our true nature as attributeless being directly, where it's just awareness aware of itself, which is an infinite field, or we can experience it in a kind of disguised way. So the first kosher is the body of bliss, which is just the only aspect that's mended there really is the known aspect. So it's still awareness, which is aware, but rather than it just being aware of awareness, it's aware of infinite bliss. So the body of bliss is like it's an infinite field of bliss, but it's a self-knowing field. So when we're knowing bliss, we're knowing it as a field, and we are that field. It's the field knowing itself
Yeah.
rather than a person knowing it.
Yeah, I feel like that is there's a I mean if there's a sense of um kind of love within it, and like sometimes I say, oh well, who is it who loves, and I like, and it feels like it's the love that loves,
Yes.
and it's not, there's not me, there's no
No.
separate me, there's only the love that loves.
Yes.
Would
Well,
that be?
yes, exactly. Well, that's actually one of the higher aspects of the body of wisdom, because the body of wisdom is where all forms are arising equally and effortlessly. So again, it's an impersonal field, and you're remaining as an impersonal field. What you're describing there, though, is where the ability to experience becomes heightened, because in each of the koshas there are different frequency levels. There are 7 in each of them, which relate to the colors of the rainbow. They relate to the chakras as well. But when when we become familiar with effortless being, the body of wisdom, it's just seeing that all the forms arise equally and effortlessly. So in this moment, there are just forms appearing. So there's awareness of the phone screen, there's awareness of the body sitting on the seat, awareness of the two voices, the conversation, awareness of the sunlight coming through the window. And so the only place we can know everything impersonally and effortlessly is the body of wisdom. And in Neo-Advaita, that's really what they're describing. They're describing functioning from the body of wisdom, where we're experiencing as a timeless, infinite field, which has no sense of personalization. And but that's only one option, really. The other options are still available, and we can still access them and utilize them. In fact, when we function from the foundation of effortless being, we can utilize the others. Well, we can access the body of bliss much more effectively, and also reconfigure the way the mental, emotional, and physical realms function as well. So, but it's clear that you're already functioning consciously, probably at will, from effortless being, where there's the ability just to notice the forms appearing. So it isn't Ben who's aware of them. It's just there's this where there's total neutrality and effortlessness. It's just the innocent, effortless noticing of the forms arising without any intention.
Yeah.
And you're already totally familiar with that, Ben. Well, it
Yeah.
isn't Ben who's familiar, but it's
No, no. I mean, there is a sense of, uh, is there a sense of, it feels good. I mean, that feels good.
yes. Well, we'll look at the distinction because Ben's still available.
Yeah.
He isn't lost. Actually, Ben gets an upgrade and is enhanced. So that's,
There's
that's
a lot, there's a lot of relaxation about, Ben, basically,
yeah, fantastic. Well, he becomes
because,
available at will, really, but he
yeah,
isn't. He isn't center stage anymore, and he isn't running the show. He's
yeah,
well, he never was, but
no.
there's no sense of Ben running the show. But the experience of Ben and the contrast of the human experience is still fully available, and it's much more delightful, really, when it's from the foundation of your infinite, effortless nature.
So I suppose it is the sort of the functioning Ben, in that sense, is enlivened, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. And
Because,
also, sorry, carry on, yeah.
um, because like the in the kind of, when Ben is sort of the one who's running the show, or pretending to run the show, there is a kind of sense of, that's a kind of imprisonment, isn't it? Because it isn't the
Mm.
truth,
No
and so and that comes with all the kind of feelings of, um, contraction and
limitation. Yeah,
tension, and yeah.
yeah.
But from the effortless being perspective, I think I think there's been some sort of switch between where I was primarily functioning as Ben and
Mhm.
dipping into effortless being,
Yeah.
and I feel like there might have been a kind of a movement. Well, like, it's not really a movement though, is it? So that would be, but like,
It's turning Ben off to a degree, really, and then just seeing that all along you've actually only ever remained as the infinite being. That's all you've ever
yeah,
been. It's
yeah, yeah,
just that rather than seeing Ben as being compulsory, you realize Ben's optional, that you can pick up the human aspect of experience and utilize it fully and consciously, but it's there, and from the sovereignty of your infinite nature, you can utilize it in the most delightful way, rather than feeling that that it's a limitation.
yeah, yeah.
But
Because that's from the for like old perspective, is because that's the problem, isn't it? Like the it's a heavy weight of all this kind of, you're responsible on some level, you're responsible for everything, aren't you? Or you're responsible for everything, and then you've got all this emotional baggage that you're dragging around, and like, there's a lot of problems, and then, but actually, from effortless being perspective, the like Ben is a Ben essentially, there's nothing to Ben. There's nothing. He doesn't actually have any, like, he's a wisp of nothing. But like, uh
you can turn him on and turn him off. That's the thing, though, because really we're always only resting and remaining as the impersonal field of timeless, omnipotent, indestructible being. Really, that's all we can be. But we can assume personalization. And the way we do that is very much like the way a character is created in a movie or in a play, which is it's only when the character starts to deliver the lines, which always include the words like I, me, or mine, that you create the sense that there is a Ben. But
yeah,
when you're not using those words, it's just the infinite, timeless, impersonal, effortless being.
so in that sense, you um just trying to sort of, so let's say in your case, you rest as that's your, and then when you require David, you
You just
basically does
step
this
in,
thing.
yeah, just step into his boots and pretend that that's who you are, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
Okay.
just
That
it's just a little role, really. But
yeah.
we can have a look at some of the aspects of the way we can utilize the personal realm selectively, which is where it becomes much more fun, really. Um, but what I'd like to do, because there's already the ability to experience in a heightened way in effortless being, I'd just like to look at that with you for a moment, if we could, because it'll just help to clarify things, really. Because
Yeah.
the way you were describing love, for instance, is you were describing infinite impersonal love rather than the personal mode. And so what's happening for you is, because the foundation of your infinite nature of effortless being is already fully known, then the experiences which arise within effortless being can move on to higher levels. So things like love, compassion, unity, um, well, even things like appreciation or gratitude, they're available as well, more so, but in a kind of universal sense. And so those experiences are going to take you more in the direction of bliss, and then ultimately bliss will just be available in a conscious way where you can just access it at will. But it's just that this world has conditioned us to take a turn into the mental realm, into the conceptual realm, rather than remaining in non-conceptual awareness. And but because you have that ability already, then it's a choice for you, actually, whether you function mainly from impersonal being and then you experience things in a heightened way. So you can already experience unity consciousness, which is really where you you recognize that you are just this open space of awareness and beingness, which is
Yeah.
timeless. And then the forms appearing within that are appearing effortlessly. And then as you notice those forms, you realize they're appearing within the infinite field of awareness you've always been. So it becomes a very intimate experience, because you realize it's all you in that sense, that everything you're seeing, which previously we've been conditioned in the subject object mode to believe that you're Ben and then there's this world outside. You see
Yeah.
that everything, including the body of mind of Ben, is arising within this infinite field,
Yeah.
and it changes the nature of it. So, well, with your wife, for instance, the experience with your wife can be experienced either in terms of personal love or in terms of universal love. So, when you're showing up as Ben, you know, and you go for a romantic dinner, then you can have that experience, a sort of the personalized version.
Yeah.
Um, but when you're just resting as effortless being, and you're not experiencing as Ben, you're experiencing as the infinite field of awareness that you've always been. And there are forms arising within that. And one of the forms is the body mind of Ben's wife, which is actually seen to be arising in this unified field. So the opportunity is to experience unity consciousness rather
Yeah.
than the subject object version of love.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, isn't it? If you so so I mean, the last few months I just feel very connected, like opposed to how it used to be, which was very disconnected. And
Great.
so, like, uh I mean, I don't feel there is any division between in that when I'm feeling like that. It's
Yes.
it is just one. I mean, it's very freeing and open and
Mm,
accepting and beautiful.
mm,
Um,
mm.
to not be, because it was pretty painful, the always feeling disconnected.
Yes.
It was is not a it's an unpleasant
Yes.
mode to
Yes.
operate in.
Yeah. Well, it, the sense of disconnection in one sense is your intuition, because it's saying there's something not quite right here. Let's have a look at this, because
Yeah,
this isn't the way it needs to be.
yeah,
So you would never fully accept that, really, but that's probably part of the reason for the commitment to finding out what's really going on.
yeah. Actually, that's the driver then, isn't it? That's the
Yes.
I mean, that's funny, isn't it? Because you'd say, oh, well, feeling disconnected is a negative, but actually, it's the draw to unity, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so actually, it's a massive positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great, though. And so you may have heard in some of the conversations the way I describe the dualistic realm as being distinct from unity. So unity consciousness, oneness, exists within the body of bliss and the body of wisdom. But the other three, so the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body, or the astral, etheric, and physical realms, are a distinct dualistic system, and it operates on different rules, really. So um, it's a kind of energy. It's like an energy matrix, really. And if we're living in the sort of conditioned way, where we've adopted personalization, then we're subject to the implications of the dualistic realm. Um, when we realize that we never actually entered it, we've always remained in our true infinite nature, then we're no longer fueling it with our energy.
yeah. And no, and so on. So you're not bound by its rules, are you? On
No,
some level,
no,
so that it's they because that's because for my like either it's infinite or it's not, isn't it? Right, basically. So if
yes,
infinite nature is true, then on some level the dualistic level can't be true, can it?
no. It's a sort of half creation in a way, because it operates on the basis of infinite intelligence, but without the component of love.
Yeah,
And and really, it's knowing that because we've been conditioned into personalization, it's a mode we're familiar with. So we tend to personalize experiences, like, well, especially thoughts and emotions. But no one tells us that actually they're part of this dualistic realm, and they're inviting us to identify on a personal level, because that's how our energy gets plugged in.
yeah,
But when you realize you can remain as impersonal being, then the personal realm becomes optional. So we experience it in a different way. So as you were saying, with things like therapy, or various techniques, they're actually still part of the dualistic realm, because we have to show up as a person with our little suitcase with our baggage in it
yeah,
to process it. But actually, when we realize that we don't need to step into personalization, then we realize, as you did, the way you were having that experience, that actually there is no baggage, really. It's only because everyone is the infinite being, they can shine the light of their infinite potential through a concept of limitation, which is that they have karma, or they have subconscious patterns that they need to release, or
yeah,
have tendencies like depression or fear or anxiety or whatever that they need to process. But you realize they only belong to the character, the
yeah,
dualist character, which you can turn off.
yeah,
And then you can reconfigure the dualistic experience, where you can still utilize the dualistic realm, but you don't turn on the unfavorable aspects, you keep them turned off.
yeah, yeah. I had an experience just a couple of days ago, and I don't know if this is you may be able to shed some light on it, but I had a so I had this moment where I was talking about to my mum about something about someone, and I know I sort of became aware that my usual kind of mode would be to kind of go down a track where I would say, oh well, that's not good, and that's kind of they should be doing this, and da da da. I'm worried about that, and I'm worried about them, and that kind of thought route leads to kind of a bit of angst and
Mm.
anxious thoughts, and it kind of and I had this moment where I went, oh, hold on a minute, like that, but like I can just I sort of witnessed myself walking down this road and feeling the feelings of those things, and then I sort of went, oh, I came back to kind of me at the
Mm.
center, and it was very neutral.
Yeah.
And then I went, okay, well, actually, this person that I'm talking about is a sovereign being, and everything's actually fine, and they're perfectly, and they're kind of entirely um, responsible for their own lives, and like just saying the words, I just felt it felt kind of expansive,
Yes.
and so I felt myself to be at this sort of choosing point
Yes.
between
Fantastic.
these two realities, where and I could just at will I could walk down, or like just take a step back and be into neutral, walk down the other route, which is a much more expansive way to think about them, which there's no anxiety, there's no worry, there's is that am I is this related to what
That's
you're
yeah, that's declining the invitations in a very conscious way, really. And to be able to do it in the way you describe is fantastic because for most of us, it takes a while before we can achieve that because the invitations sometimes come in so quickly and they've grabbed us before we realize what's happened. So they can, but there was something within the way the energy was being felt, and and that enabled you to actually withdraw attention and energy from that aspect, the dualistic aspect.
yeah
So it's what you recognized really is the distinction between the delivery systems, because the delivery of any forms coming from your infinite nature have a feeling of expansion, the way you describe.
yeah
And the delivery of anything coming from the dualistic realm has a feeling of contraction.
yeah, absolutely.
So it's quite a simple choice, really.
Yeah, that's I've never seen it like that. I mean, I was shocked because I went, oh, really? You mean like there's this? It really is a choice
Mm, mm.
between these two. Yeah, I mean, it kind of blew me away really because I've never kind of realized. I think I've never realized I had the choice in that manner.
Yes. Well, because effortless being is easily available, it's the dualistic realm makes much more sense when we're viewing it from impersonal, effortless being, because we can see that the dualistic realm is optional. The reason it can be a bit sticky sometimes is because the mind, if the mind's predominating, then there is already the personalization. But
Yeah,
because the impersonal aspect is already totally available, then the option becomes really clear. So that's
yeah,
fantastic, though. That's great.
because it's then in a sense it's not from that perspective like it doesn't even feel sticky.
No.
So it feels stick when you're when it feels sticky, right? You're in kind of personal, and then
Yeah.
it's really sticky. But from the impersonal, there's nothing to
There's no,
stick to.
no, exactly.
So it's kind of um, and there's a kind of acceptance, isn't there, or of the stickiness, and that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, or it's not troubling, and it's not. I mean, obviously, when you're in the stickiness, it's big trouble,
Yeah.
big problems. But
Yes.
like when it's sort of viewed from impersonal, it's sort of like there's a kind of I don't know what it is, but just like oh that's all right,
Yes.
like it's no problem,
Yeah.
it's all right, you're absolutely fine as you are. You kind of
Yeah.
there's nothing, no harm to be done, there's no damage to be done. It's just all right,
Yeah.
and it kind of that I don't know. Even just saying that makes me feel so
Yes.
reassured or just,
definitely. And also, well, what you're describing in a way is that the invitations can continue sometimes. So there could be an invitation to be concerned about a friend or family member or someone, and um, and then just declining the invitation to identify with that. It just means that that thought just floats on by then, rather
Yeah,
than you, because it's only the personalization which energizes it. So
yeah,
the invitations in themselves aren't that they have no power of their own. It's only the power we give to them through identifying with them, and we
yeah.
put into them.
They're essentially they're inert, aren't they?
Yes.
And they're entirely inert, and then you're like that. Basically, you're they're sitting there with a magic wand, and you're tapping the one. You go, oh, tap that one, and turn it into a real thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. Yeah.
and then it becomes a monster, doesn't it? Like, and then
Yeah.
you tap it a bit more, and you keep on. Then you keep, oh, let's get us. But you don't know you're doing it. You don't know you're making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and turning it like more apparently real with
Yeah.
every tap.
And it's only ever
But
your own energy that's doing that.
yeah, that's clear. That's clear.
Fantastic.
That's
Well,
clear.
it shortcuts. Sorry,
Sorry.
Ben. No,
No, you saying?
it shortcuts any notions of having to release anything because you see that you see the distinction between impersonal being and the personal realm. It's either on or off. So when you're just resting as impersonal being, which is where you always are, then you realize the personal realm can be turned on. You can, you can switch it on and you can assume the role of Ben. If you meet your mum or, you're talking to your friends or family,
Yeah,
then you can assume the role and they'll probably continue to speak to you as though you are really Ben. And then you
yeah,
just have that little walk on part with them.
yeah,
But there isn't the energetic investment before, and there is also it's easier to remain neutral in the way you were describing. Sometimes you meet someone and they don't realize they're kind of inviting us into the dualistic realm and inviting us to invest our energy. So they say, oh, have you heard about this person? And they're telling you a little story about them. And it's
uh-huh.
like an invitation to become upset in some way.
Yeah,
But you can that's an example of the way you can utilize the dualistic realm in a selective way. So you obviously wouldn't be rude and say, "Oh well, I'd rather you not do that." But
yeah,
you just sort of remain neutral and then just say what you need to do so it doesn't get inflated. And
yeah.
but it's almost we're having this conversation, but what's really apparent is that all of this is completely clear to you already, actually.
Yeah, but funnily enough, I hadn't quite realised how clear it was. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
like yeah, it is. Yeah, it feels clear. It feels clear.
fantastic.
But of course, but everybody's firing off these invitations all of the time, aren't they? So, like, everything is firing, like the media or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
You like, I guess if if the predominant if the world if there's a predominance of the functioning of the dualistic system, then then it's like a it's
Like a big machine, really, which
yeah, yeah.
everyone's contributing their power to keeping the machine going.
What happens when like everybody withdraws their
Investment in the dualistic realm.
investment in it? Yeah,
It's the end of all the invitations. Well, it's just a return to unity then.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it's quite an interesting little game at the moment because you can see there's an intensification in the dualistic realm because I think the dualistic realm has cottoned on that some of its major investors have withdrawn their investment, and it's almost like a bank that's going to collapse. The
yeah,
bank is trying to maintain the illusion that it's all still safe to invest in it, but it knows that there's a big empty hole in the middle.
yeah. There's definitely been a change, hasn't there, in the kind of you know I seem to where like these days wherever I go, I meet people who are kind of having this sort of understanding.
Yes.
Whereas 5 years ago, it didn't feel the same. I mean, maybe that's just maybe I've changed a bit, but
No,
um,
I feel that definitely the number of people who are scratching their heads and saying, well, this doesn't quite seem to be the way they're telling us is it's yeah, definitely changed. I think a lot, not too long ago, um, people were listening to the mainstream media and believing it, and so they, without realizing that it's just keeping them in the energy game.
yeah,
But it's great the way you've seen it actually, because the two aspects are clear to you. Because there are there are people where there can be realization, which is realization in a sort of neo-Advaita way, is the ability to function from impersonal being. It's just seeing that you are this infinite open space of beingness and awareness
yeah,
in which all forms arise equally and effortlessly.
yeah,
But if that's all that's known, it can feel quite disempowered in a way, because it's, people say, oh, it's all just happening. There is no one, there's nothing you can do.
yeah.
But
And there's no point as well, is there? There's no reason, and there's no point.
yeah,
And some people get excited about that, don't they? And they go, "Well, this feels freeing when there's no um, kind of
mm,
like it might be true, but it's a bit nihilistic on some level."
yeah, it's like a little ride, really, isn't it? So they're all on the there is no one and there's nothing we can do ride. But then
Yeah,
when you begin to make sense of the dualistic realm, it becomes much more interesting, because you realize that it's the opportunity is in both aspects. It's in an absolute and a relative. So we we're kind of integrating the absolute into the relative experience. So it's being able to function from one's infinite nature even in the human realm,
yeah,
which is where it gets really interesting, because the more you align with your infinite nature, like all of the, for everyone, all of the, most amazing aspects like creativity, intuition, inspiration, all of those things are coming from the body of wisdom
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Um, and learning how to utilize that in a conscious way, and then to regulate the investment in the personal realm, you realize that the investment in the personal realm was something which was compromising your potential to some degree, because to whatever potential to whatever degree we're investing in the personal realm, that percentage could be aligned with your infinite nature. So it's the full-on power then, rather than a sort of diluted version.
yeah. Because you're exhausted, aren't you, when you're fully invested in the dualistic? It's
Yeah,
like it's like it's you're dragging yourself around essentially.
yeah, yeah.
Whereas in the infinite, you're you can't drag yourself around because you are, in a sense, you're it, aren't you?
Yes.
You're
And
the
you're
current.
and rather than because everything in the dualistic realm is designed to get us to take responsibility. So it's the idea that we have to use the mind and we have to work hard, and it's effort achieving things in time. But then you realize, resting as effortless being, it becomes much more magical, because there are things which are just coming to you effortlessly, like intuition is guiding you,
Yeah,
and different opportunities, insights, cognitions show up, and it's really being, integration, you could say, is learning to be alert to the things which are coming to you effortlessly, things which seem to just come from nowhere, because they're the most th- they have the most potential,
yeah,
because it's opposite to the way we've been conditioned. Rather than effort, hard work, competing, straining, all of those things, you realize, well, actually, it's just being alert to see what's coming to me, because I can, I can utilize those things. And because the main distinction is the intelligence operating from your infinite nature is a combination of infinite love with infinite intelligence. So it's benign. It has your best interests at heart, and
Yeah.
it wants you to have the best experience. Whereas the dualistic realm, because it's a kind of predatory energy system,
Yeah.
then what it's trying to do is get us to invest our energy and deplete us.
Yeah.
So but it becomes really easy to navigate when you just know that the distinction is between expansion or contraction, because you can just spot, very easily what's coming down the line.
Yeah. And I suppose the sort of so-called problems are like just taking a walk down that road, really, aren't they?
Yes,
And like the further you walk and the further you, and the reality is, I don't think there's even a walk, and it's actually a step, isn't it? In a sense, so
yes,
you could
yeah,
say, oh, I've walked 10 miles down that road of a problem, but actually you're only a step away from home in a way.
yes,
But even a step is like it's you're never not you're never not there, even in the illusion of walking the kind of
exactly, yeah,
the dodgy road.
yes, yeah. The infinite being can never become the person. It can never not be the infinite being. It can only assume that role, and it's only an assumption. So when we just withdraw that, which is it's so simple, really. It is just maintained by those words, I, me, or mine,
Yeah,
because um, where there's impersonal, if someone, it's the way you were describing it actually. If someone is speaking on a personal level and they're kind of inviting you in, to make a judgment about someone or some situation, then there's the potential to step into a personalized version, and then you can use words like I, me, or mine. Well, I don't agree with that. I wouldn't do that. That's not my idea. I wouldn't,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's the personalization. Whereas you were just smiling sweetly and saying yes, and not even moving from your infinite impersonal nature into any kind of assumption of personalization.
yeah, yeah. That's clear. The And it's quite easy. It's quite the using that language is it's immediately divisional, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
I don't know the
Yes.
word it creates the division.
Yes.
It kind of locates you as the person
Yes.
immediately, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
It does. Yeah. And
yeah,
it's great the way you see that, because that's exactly as it is, because there's like this slither of, it's like an invisible slither of timelessness, which is your true infinite nature, which is where we all exist. That's the only place we can ever be.
yeah,
Then there's the option to pretend that we're kind of moving away from that into personalization. So it's those very words that give the illusion of actually stepping out of it.
yeah, 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 yeah. And you kind of wrap yourself in, yeah, you, well, you bind yourself, don't you, in a like as a outside of the universe somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
And then at that point, when you're there, then you feel disconnected.
Yes.
In
Yeah.
the movement of personalization, that's how the disconnection that that's the symptom of doing that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that like what you said earlier about the the disconnection is the pointer to your to say, hold on a minute, you better
Yes.
have a
Because it feels different, doesn't it? As soon as we're using those words. There's an old joke, which just reminded me actually. There's a guy and he wants to buy a lawnmower, and he says to his mate, he says, "I wonder if you'd take me to have a look at this lawnmower." And it was a really nice sunny evening, and they were having a good chat. And then as they went further along the road, the guy said, "Well, I bet he's only selling it because it's worn out." And then he went along. There was all this kind of speculation. Well, I bet it's, I bet it's no good. I bet there is. there's no fuel in it, and and then so there's all this speculation along the way, and then they arrive at the doorstep, and he knocks on the door, and he says, "You know what you can do with your lawnmower?" And it's a bit like that in the human realm. We're kind of, we're creating something which has no substance.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? That's it's entirely fabricated, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you respond to the world as if it was the truth.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
mm. So we have to be careful not to get the lawnmower out.
I I need to I need to get my lawnmower out actually. It's just reminded me.
It's
Mm.
okay if it's a real lawnmower. You can just make.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's clear. It's
fantastic.
yeah, it's well, what I'm sort of because there's obviously so many teachings and kind of things around, and I wonder why um you know and many have truth within them, but
Mm,
but this particular, obviously it's resonated for me that you're kind of the invitations
mm.
uh, part of it. But I just wonder why that doesn't exist in other. I mean, maybe it does exist in some of the teachings. I just haven't come across it. But I mean, I'm very thankful that it has.
Mm.
But like, I just wonder why, because it seems a very important
Yeah,
distinction, right?
well, it does because lots of, well, even non-duality teachers, put forward the idea of things like welcoming and releasing and therapy and all of those things, which is actually maintaining personalization. And they're even suggesting using, well, it's a comedy show in a way. It's because we are already the infinite being, and that's all we can ever be. So we just find that there are different um, little distortions which are part of the entertainment, really. One of the
Yeah,
funniest ones I feel is self-inquiry, where people are asking the question, "Who am I?" I think that's hilarious, really, because we're looking to find our infinite impersonal nature, and then we're asking a question which is going to put us directly back into personalization.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, if the question was, "What am I?" Because your true nature is the infinite impersonal being, so it isn't
Right.
a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
physical.
There's
It
no
isn't,
who. There's no
there's
who
no
to be.
who.
Right.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is good. Oh, yeah, that is. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But
Yeah,
things like that, which in a way you could say it's all part of the entertainment, because and also there seems to be a sequence where realization is becoming increasingly easy. For years it seemed really difficult and only a few people were getting it,
yeah,
whereas now it's much easier.
yeah,
And and so there seems to be an acceleration, and it seems to be part of that in a way.
yeah,
The key thing for you actually, Ben, is you just trusting your own intuition because it's guided you very well. You've spotted things along the way. There have been
yeah,
things which have become very apparent. And in terms of any teaching, you'll know now what has value and what doesn't have value.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so you don't need to, it's okay to listen to teachers and watch videos or read books, but the the primary authority is your infinite sovereign nature.
yeah. I really feel that strongly. Actually,
Yeah.
it's almost like because you have that information within you, don't you? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, and it's adapted. Well, is it adapted to you? But it, I mean, that's the close. Like you go to a teacher, then you're getting a kind of a slightly. It's going to have the perfume of them in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather
Yes.
than the perfume of you, which is
Yeah.
going to be more. Um, it's well, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Hmm.
That
Yeah,
makes sense to me.
definitely. Well, you could say, on the basis of our infinite nature, if we're kind of consenting to the idea that there is an external authority, then because you're the infinite being, you can play that little game. So, the infinite being says, well, be my guest, if you want to play that little game, that's okay,
Yeah,
But actually, it's much more simple when you realize that I think everyone ultimately is the sovereign being, and everyone has their own unique perspective and their own unique creation, in a way, you could say. So
yeah,
it's much better to honor that and to align with
yeah,
it, because that's where things will appear in a much more coherent way. And it's much more fun like that, really, because we're not putting it through some kind of filter.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, I get this sort of it's like a scent. It's not a scent, but like um when I kind of sense truth, or
Hmm.
and it doesn't. This is not necessarily to do with the teacher or not teacher. It's just in any even
Yes.
the words that are coming out of my mouth.
Yes.
Sometimes I go, that sounds right and good,
Yes. Yeah.
and so I go, oh, follow that, follow that, follow that, and if I follow that, it expands somehow,
Yeah.
and so it kind of it has the sense of the infinite about it,
Yes, definitely. Well,
and
it's
then
completely authentic, isn't it? You realize that and in a way, I think what you'll find, because there is the ability to function from impersonal being, that becomes the normal mode for you. So it's
yeah,
become, and the interesting thing is that it's effortless. There isn't any sense that you have to contrive anything or try or convince anybody. It just sort of flows through, and it's just easy, really.
yeah,
And yeah, well, it's just effortless.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, it's amazing that there's so much clarity, really, that it's just there, because there isn't really any confusion for you. And even, well, there are really only two aspects to become familiar with. The one is realizing one's true infinite impersonal nature, and mainly is to do with the distinction between impersonal being, which is already here, and then adopting the personal mode,
Yeah,
which we use through the language. And then realizing that the dualistic realm is a kind of energy game,
yeah,
and but we only we only utilize that on our own terms, really, because we're the sovereign being, and we decide whether we play or not.
yeah, yeah,
But it is fascinating, because I'm sure you'll find that, well, there's a sort of progressive aspect on the sort of focal point of Ben. So you'll see that the power and the alignment with your infinite nature is going to increase, and there are no upper limits to that. And the ability to access much higher experiences within the body of wisdom and the body of bliss become increasingly available.
yeah,
And then the refinement in the way you experience in the dualistic realm, you learn that you can regulate that,
yeah,
and that becomes more and more refined. And then simultaneously, there seems to be something in a collective sense that's happening, where lots of people are withdrawing their investment from the dualistic realm, and
yeah,
that there are consequences there also.
yeah,
So it's a very interesting time, really.
yeah, yeah. It's bright. It's well, that's it's funny, isn't it? Because you can't. I mean, because if you watch the media and what have you, you could be convinced that you know, all sorts of things. Um, but actually, yeah, I mean, it's funny how unconcerned I feel about
Yes.
about those
Yeah.
those things. Or
Yeah.
certainly right now, I mean,
Yes.
maybe I'll. Um,
Well, you realize they're just collective invitations, really, Ben. They're just, they're designed to put people into energetic compromise, where all of the infinite omnipotent beings watching the news actually plugging their energy and fueling all of that stuff. But it's
Yeah,
only the only reason it's there is because those people are plugging their energy in and fueling it.
yeah,
If people withdrew the investment in that and they remained in neutrality,
yeah,
um, it's game over, really.
yeah, yeah. But it's interesting to see that there's a kind of, there's a, um, there's a reaction, if you like, to um, the kind of globalism type
Mm.
scenarios.
Yes.
But actually, the reaction is as much an invitation as the.
Yes.
So it's sort of like people get sort of sucked down like a
Yeah.
rabbit hole, don't they?
Yes.
In terms of I mean, any number of subjects,
Yes.
but
Because
they're not.
energetically, it's just um, changing your investment really, because it's investing into other kinds of disturbing material, isn't it? Which
Yeah, so it's a swap, isn't it? From
yeah,
like, you might have been worried about kind of wars or something before, but
mm,
now you're worried about, chemtrails or something like that.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I'm not even saying anything is true or not true, but um, like that's what I've sort of perceived is that because they're not because if I feel like if I'm viewing from impersonal sort of infinite awareness, then they're all limitations.
yes, yeah,
They're all sort of forms of limitation and forms of fear and
mm, mm,
and they're not and they can't be true in
yeah. Well,
in
you
the
realize that the dualistic matrix is it's very much like the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode, which is that it's either on or off. So um, it's well, a friend of mine who's a physicist says that actually the dualistic matrix is blinking in and out something like 35,000 times a second. So it's only an appearance, really. It is, the
yeah,
Neo-Advaita guys in one sense, they're right, because it is really
yeah,
only an appearance.
yeah,
But yeah, it's great the way you recognize the kind of energetic implications, because you can see, well, there are two or three main areas. So there's the conditioned version, which lots of people invest in, is, if we kind of go to school, we're conditioned through the education system to compete, to get a career, to actually serve this dualistic system, really, which is what most of the professions do.
yeah,
And and so a lot of people remain there. So it's about the holidays, the cars, the family, whatever it is,
yeah,
and that's the one area of investment. And then some people see through that, so they turn it into a spiritual quest.
yeah,
And so they then become a seeker, but they're
yeah,
they're investing all of the energy, instead of trying to get the cars and the houses and the birds and whatever it is. They're investing in all of the retreats and the books and the videos and everything. And then there's the third aspect, which is the one you described, which is um, realizing that the world isn't quite as it appears to be, and then there can be a sort of seeking to try to understand what's really going on, and that can consume all our energy as well. But I feel neutrality. I think neutrality combined with a balanced form of knowledge is the best in each of those areas, because you want balance in a worldly sense. So you want a comfortable life experience,
yeah,
harmony in your relationships, financial stability.
yeah,
And then in a spiritual sense, it's worth having some understanding of the various options so that we can utilize the opportunities available, but not be subject to the kind of energetic implications of some of the spiritual ideas. And
how do you mean by that? You mean like kind of karma, for instance. Is that what you meant?
Yeah, well, karma really is karma is an invitation, really. It's the because we have to things to do with like karma and reincarnation. You have to show up as an individual, as a separate being for those things to apply.
Yeah,
So you can withdraw investment from those, and also another one which is energetically depleting is the whole concept of things like welcoming or releasing mental and emotional patterns, or going to therapy, or seeing
yeah,
counselors and that kind of thing, because that's all really perpetuating the investment in the personal realm.
yeah.
So we can withdraw the investment from those stocks and shares.
There's going to be a lot of out of work counsellors. What the hell's everybody going to do?
Well, they'll all switch over to assisting people to realize their true nature and to be energetically free of the system. So
Ah, of course, yeah, that makes
I speak to quite a few counselors
yeah,
and therapists, and it's quite an easy transition, really.
yeah, of course it is. Yeah, actually, I
The
know I have a friend who's doing that actually. So yeah,
Fantastic, yeah. But it's the thing, for people in therapy and counseling is to make that transition is a really powerful one to make, because they already have a clear understanding of the personal realm. So that can be helpful, because that can be the basis of assisting people, because they can say, well, actually, that isn't something you need to be focusing on.
yeah,
And then functioning more from impersonal being. Um, Helping others is just much more powerful then,
yeah,
because
yeah,
even with discovering impersonal being and discovering the way the dualistic realm works, there are lots of people I know who've been diagnosed with various forms of mental illness, and then suddenly they just realize it's a load of nonsense,
yeah, yeah,
and they just turn it all off and just carry on,
yeah, yeah,
without all of those limitations.
yeah,
But yeah, the third aspect really, which is the seeing the kind of energetic implications of the way this world works. So the financial system, the legal system, things like, yeah, as you say, like the chemtrails, the food, the water supply, um all the things, to do with the alternative media. And but again, my feeling is, uh, I don't believe anything actually. I don't, I think if we say, oh, you have some people who say, oh, the world's flat, and then others say, no, it's round, and those sort of
yeah,
things. But it's I think just being open-minded really is,
yeah,
it's remaining, so we don't. The key really is to remain open, because I think there are some dramatic things coming down the line. You can see it.
yes. I feel that as well. I feel that strongly. Like stuff that we is like out of our almost comfort zone
Yes,
and like what we think is normal.
yes.
Like, yeah,
But I
that's
think,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's because like if so you have a so someone brings the world's flat, right?
mm,
There's no need to actually take a view on it on one level, is there?
no, no, exactly.
You could go, well, that's your, you know,
Mm.
like because probably previously I would have gone into no, hold on a minute, that's you're wrong, and these are the reason why you're wrong, and whereas actually, I mean, I'm not 100% certain that they're wrong. I couldn't
No,
say because I don't have all the data,
no,
and nor can no one can have all the data on anything, right?
no.
So if you don't know the answer, the you a neutral I don't know, and maybe you're right.
Yes.
Actually, that's more. I don't know. I feel like that's a more.
It's more balanced and it's more respectful, and also it's only if we adopt a particular polarity that we're investing our energy. So
Yeah,
we can consider all the different options from impersonal being without investing in any of them. So we
yeah,
can be alert to them
yeah,
and see what's coming down the line, which is all part of the entertainment, really.
Yeah, yeah. That feels right.
Mm.
Yeah. I don't know. It just feels. I just feel like so kind of, you know, it just feels very um kind of, it's just beautiful
Effortless.
and safe, isn't it? And it's effortless. Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
You've said that before, haven't you? Yeah, that's it. That is it. Yeah, very good.
I mean, it's comical in a way because all the conditioning we've had is to do with effort, and effort is overlaid on effortlessness, so it appears to obscure effortlessness, but the effortlessness is there all along.
Yeah,
And it's very easy to discover it. We just need to stop making an effort, and there it is.
there it is. Yeah,
Mm.
that's that is great.
But it'll
Mm.
be quite interesting for you, Ben, because I'm sure you're going to be able to assist other people. You know, I think that that's an aspect really of realizing your true nature. You realize
Yeah,
there's the opportunity to help, you know, others to do the same.
I feel that calling, but I haven't. And I sort of, I'm on my email. I said so. I write sort of fantasy novels, but with a
Yes.
they're kind of the the intent with them is to kind of um through a kind of exciting story
Yes.
um to touch upon some of these things.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Um, that's been but I mean, and I, I intend to do that, and you know, I tend to, I'm kind of looking for like, on the internet. Sometimes I go, I wonder if there's an awakened literary agent, but you
Yes.
can't. Obviously, you don't. They don't come up when you do that.
No.
But I mean, I just wonder if that actually is going to be more prevalent, though, given the way that things seem to be kind of moving. I feel like that these sort
Yes,
of there's more
definitely.
likely.
Well, it seems as though realization is something which can find its way into other forms of activity. So in writing or in art or
Yeah,
music, you know, sound therapy is one which has come up quite a lot. But there's a lady called Melissa who I had a conversation with a couple of weeks ago, and she's just released a book, actually. It's a children's book, along similar lines to the ones you describe.
yeah,
So it's interesting that um, these themes are arising, but that's in one way you can see how that can be beneficial because if people have been involved in the world of form, so like reading books or watching videos and or listening to music, that you can see how those forms can be utilized
yeah,
to enable them to realize their true infinite impersonal nature.
yeah, yeah. And I've heard you say in other chats with people that in a sense when you're your if you like your purpose in life and things like that, that you actually that unfolds effortlessly as well, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. Yeah,
So
it's knowing that really when you just stop listening to the mind, which you already have, your intuition is guiding you already,
yeah,
and it's guiding you in the most delightful way. So
yeah,
it's really just utilizing the two frequencies of expansion and contraction to guide you, because
yeah,
anything which gives you, like with writing, for instance, that's something which gives you a sense of expansion,
yeah,
infinite possibilities.
yeah,
And it's, you know, that's something that's very dear to you. So that's a really clear pointer.
yeah,
Um, and then you just become guided in those ways.
yeah, yeah,
But it's just you're if you the way I see it in a way is if you look at the billions of people you know apparently in the dualistic realm, um, self-realization still seems like a bit of a you know a remote possibility.
Yeah.
And you see, well, actually, your intuition has guided you to that already. So you then realize how reliable it is because
That's true.
of all of the things you could have looked at and become involved in and been distracted by, none of it stuck. And you've just
Yeah.
moved through all of the content through the whole of your life to realization,
Yeah.
which just shows how effectively your intuition has guided you.
Yeah. I have this sense of like maybe this is something that many people feel, but they have almost of like a remembering of it. Like
Yes.
it's so familiar. Like,
Yeah.
is that something that people say to you a lot?
Well, quite a few do, and what's apparent, really, in the conversations I have is, I mean, I'm hoping this is true of everyone. It's certainly true of the people I have conversations with, which is that everyone I have conversations with, they actually brought realization with them. It's like it was there prior to this human experience,
Yeah.
and the clarity and all the knowledge was already there. It's just that to have this dualistic experience, we had to consent to having that turned off temporarily.
Yeah.
But then it becomes reactivated, and but that's the way you describe it is exactly the way it is in most cases because I was having a chat with a lady the other evening and she was saying, well, and this is a quite a common invitation. She was saying, well, some of the people on your channel, they have all these amazing experiences. And I've never had any of those. And then she was just describing the way there has been this distinction between impersonal being and the field of silence and the personal mode experience, which has been there all her life, but she hadn't really noticed it. And so yeah, it's fascinating, really. But I think that's an aspect which is you can see in a way that until recently, realization has required a little bit of seeking and a bit of focus. But in some ways, you can see there could be a point where, because consciousness is a morphogenetic field,
Yeah.
that it becomes available to everyone, and everyone just wakes up and realizes
Yeah.
instantaneously what they truly are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a sense that that could happen now. There's a feeling of that somehow.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun, really.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed the um when you've said in your videos about that like often these things it's all a bit of fun really, and it isn't a I suppose that's if you that whenever you view anything from that place, then it's lost
Yes.
it's lost any kind of all it can be is a game, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Really,
Yes. Well, when
because
you see, even with traditional forms of spirituality, which are to do with sort of progressive sequences, with the way the koshas are normally presented, if you do a Google search, the koshas are presented in reverse order. So it's presented as though the physical is primary, and then we have to move through the emotional, mental body of wisdom and body of bliss to get back to our true infinite nature. And that requires years and lifetimes of arduous spiritual practice, focus, dedication, austerity. When
yeah,
really you
the other
wake
way
up
around.
and realize it's the other way around. You're already there and you can't be anywhere else, really.
Yeah, that's it. It's it completely flipped on its head, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you're like I just sort of had a kind of idea of like a pyramid that was flipped, and
Yes,
the body's now at the top, and so
yes,
your infinite nature shining through the koshas to the final, the sort of
yes,
physical manifestation, being the
exactly.
last possible
Yes.
in that. So, yeah,
Sequence from subtle to gross, really.
yeah. And we all but we view ourselves as the a separate individual entity that must that is stuck in their physical body
Yes.
and has got to progress through the, as you said, the arduous kind of approach until you finally, if you're very lucky and you've sweated enough, maybe you'll touch bliss.
Yeah.
It's probably like that way is probably a more um, commercially more viable. You know,
Yes. Yeah,
like
definitely. Yeah.
if if
It's a
you can
long
get the gold,
term.
if you can get the gold on day one, there's
Yes.
nowhere to go with it, is there? So
No.
other than kind of expansion and enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, you can
But
see we've just if you know, in terms of the life experience of Ben, you can see that there's been an aspect of sort of concealing the key points because otherwise there'd be no ride. There'd be no fun. There would be no revelation.
yeah,
It would just always be known. And
yeah,
this particular experience is about, you know, just a sort of sequence of progression
yeah,
where the infinite self's revealing itself to itself. But
yeah,
unfortunately, you might have had a couple of years after uni when it was a bit rough, but since then it's been fairly progressive.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. Mm.
Yeah, it's so much easier actually speaking with people these days because it's not a battle. You know, it's it used to be like it used to be like a bit of a fight with the demiurge. You know, you've heard me use
Yeah,
the demiurge before, the
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
administrator of the dualistic realm, and the conversations. It was like the demiurge was channeling through, and then the people were sort of voicing all of these limitations and identifications, and you have to just keep sort of hitting them until
yeah.
it's
And
over.
and now it's changed to more that people are just kind of
Well, the majority of people I have conversations with now have watched the conversations on my YouTube channel, and many more people are realizing their true nature just from watching the conversations, from having to one-to-ones.
yeah,
And because, I mean, this has just happened really with no planning or anything, but just because it's usually a few weeks before I can get to speak to someone. Most people
yeah,
self-realize before the
yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah. It was funny because I basically because you have you title them two differently, don't you? You have ones where people realize their
Yes,
true nature, and you get ones where it's a conversation with you. And
yes,
so I just went for all the ones with realizing their true nature,
yes,
and just listened to those, and
yes.
like I found them very I don't know, like something
Yeah, they're
yeah,
the most powerful ones. You know, for seeking or you to realize one's true nature, they're definitely the ones to watch first of all.
yeah,
Um, and then the conversations tend to be addressing a few questions, and
yeah,
the conversations are more to do with sort of fine tuning and refinement,
yeah,
whereas the clarity which comes in those, it's something. I was having a conversation with a really nice lady the other evening, and she said that, oh, I was watching this particular video and I was going along with it and I could feel it and I could feel this sense of expansion and it was just amazing. And I thought, yes, this is it. This is it. There's going to be realization. And then she said, but at the end, he got it and I didn't. And I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, it's just that this thought came into my mind and said, oh, you haven't got it, have you?
yeah,
But that all that was that was just an
yeah,
invitation.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's how the invitations work. Because we haven't told that they're being transmitted or beamed into the body mind as an invitation to try to get us to believe them, we've been accepting them most of our lives without realizing that we've been
yeah,
doing it. But when you see that that's all it is, because really the distinction between someone who's self-realized and someone who feels they're not is the one who feels they're not is just listening to the mind, which is saying, you're not self-realized yet, are
Yeah,
you? That's
yeah.
all it is.
No difference other than
No
that.
difference, no.
Yeah, that's very simple.
It's hilarious, really.
Yeah, and like also it makes it like because a lot of there's in spirituality there's a lot of uh I don't know it like it's this is you put it very simply and almost kind of just I don't know there's a sort of methodical nature to it which makes it it's not something really high that you're trying
Mm.
to find, which I guess is in some spiritual sort of teachings.
Yes.
It's or it gets wrapped up in lots of stuff, so you never know really where you are,
Yeah.
and you just you can't. There's so many theories or so many stories that there's no
No
you can never
solid
get right.
ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
No solid ground.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Mm.
Whereas how you put it is it's easy to digest
Yeah,
somehow.
well, it's I guess having a lot of conversations, it's sort of refined over the years, but the easiest way is just allowing everyone to see that the forms arise equally and effortlessly, and they're arising impersonally, and everyone can see that actually.
Yeah.
So that just looks like a little exercise. What they don't realize is you're showing them directly how to function from their infinite impersonal nature,
Yeah.
and then describing the contrast in the personal realm or the mental realm, where they're using the mind in a sort of dualistic or selective way, or in comparison, then they've actually seen their true nature before they realize what's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. That that must be quite satisfying to like engage in to see.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, really, just the way. I guess it's the way effortless being has kind of guided things because
Yeah.
you realize there is no personal, um, there isn't any personal attachment, or we can't take credit for anything because it's all anything of value is being revealed. It's as you were saying, you've recognized this already, that the ability to speak from effortless being is already fully available to you, and you can sense it because it's just coming through you.
Yeah. And
And
you could, in a sense, you couldn't come up with it, could you?
no,
Or if I tried to come up with it's more like so if I feel that this if I say something that I feel has come from effortless being,
mm,
I like kind of I like look at it. I don't know, well like I see it and I go, oh yeah, that feels good and that's right. But if I tried to manufacture that
yes,
or through the mind, it would come out as some clunky,
yeah,
lifeless um something not it's just not very pleasant because
yeah,
it's I mean because that's not how it comes, is it?
no. Well, it's
So
quite
the
easy for you actually, because what you're able to do is you're able to function from the higher levels within the body of wisdom. So when you're speaking with people, you can consciously create um, the ability to function from a unity consciousness. So in a conversation normally, like if we were in the pub, we'd be talking about football or whatever it would be, and it would be talking about our preferences, what we like, what we hate. Um, but actually, with realization, you realize that there is the ability to function as the infinite field of awareness. And um, so when you're speaking with somebody, you're actually, rather than it being in the subject object mode, you're seeing that form of the body mind appearing within the infinite ocean of awareness you've always been.
yeah
So it's unified. So there isn't any separation. And so even if the other person isn't experiencing that initially, it's something which becomes very tangible because it is a morphogenetic field.
yeah
And also, in terms of speaking, when that is activated, then it's speaking on the level of unity rather than on the level of duality, and
Yeah,
and you'll find that that's just available to you.
yeah, yeah. That's very sweet. That's very sweet.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
And you'll find that it becomes available more and more, in all sorts of situations, even, with the petrol pumps or the supermarket.
Yeah, I noticed that I went on a job the other day, and like I do these customer service audits.
Oh,
I go
yeah.
into a bit, I go into a business and sort of go through their customer their visitor process and then write it up. But and I always have a host, and so I had one host. And, like, we just fell into it straight away,
Fantastic.
and I just felt the kind of unity thing going on,
Yes.
and um, I mean, I enjoyed that because it was kind of like I've never, you wouldn't think that that would happen in that sort of circumstance,
Yeah.
really. Because I can't think of anything better than chatting about this.
Yes.
I mean, I'd do it all day, every day, I think. But
You probably will soon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd like to. I would like to because it feels so. You're in the unity, aren't you? So
Mm.
and that the kind of just recognizing the truth
Mm.
just feels so bloody wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's so well. We'll see. We'll see. I would like to. I'd like
Well,
to.
it's already happening for you. That's a great the way you describe that. And the circumstances don't need to be special in any way. It just happens
Uh,
everywhere, and that's where it becomes really magical, where
yeah.
you can have you can have that level of unity with the guy who comes around to clear your drains or something.
Yeah. 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 That's nice. And it seems to be that if like not maybe like in a verbal sense from me that if they're it seems to be called by the other person in some sense.
Mm.
So it's sort of like if I said, "Oh, I want to go and chat about this,"
Mm.
right? It wouldn't be not
No.
necessarily it wouldn't be right. But if someone comes and calls it,
Yes.
then it kind of like it feels like it feels like it's drawn from me.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, really, that's effortless being. It's because the world is a mirror, really, and that's a really good example of the way things arise. So you find people step into your space, and the key is never to initiate anything, but just be open, and then
Yeah,
things just arise.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
Fantastic.
I feel great.